Do you ever wonder how to set healthy boundaries when you're dating as a Christian? I know that a lot of times we hear about people and they talk about boundaries when dating, but they don't always talk about healthy boundaries when dating people as a Christian versus ghosting. And so today I want to have a conversation about what I think healthy boundaries are as a Christian. So, welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. So, we're always talking about all things you, me, and Jesus. If you are watching on screen, you can see me and you can see my cat who decides that she wants to bathe herself while we are here. If you're watching on the podcast, if you listen on the podcast, you can't quite see it, but you can come to the YouTube channel, You, Me, and Jesus. We're talking about how to have healthy boundaries while you're dating as a Christian without actually ghosting people. And, when I thought about this episode, I was like, I don't even know why this has to be a topic, but at the same time, I understand why it has to be a topic because people ghost whether you're Christian or not. The people ghost because of a lot of different reasons. And I want to talk about some of that. Okay, so when I think about boundaries, right? I talk about boundaries all the time, but boundaries isn't necessarily how to keep people out, okay? Boundaries are teaching people how to actually come into a relationship, like what it looks like to be in a relationship with you, right? So like my apartment complex has boundaries. In order to get into the building, you have to have a key. To get up the elevator, you got to have a key. To get into my apartment, you have to have a key, right? To get into my bank account, you got to have a login and password. You got to have certain things in place. And so as it pertains to dating, whether as a Christian or not, there needs to be certain ways of how to be or operate in this relationship, how to actually go on dates with people, how to do it God's way, according to each person's convictions and according to basically what the Bible says. And I think that one of the first things that we have to understand is that everybody has different expectations in relationships. Everybody has different convictions as when it pertains to dating, what they think is okay, what they think that God thinks is okay versus not. Everybody has had their own experience with dating, good and not so good. So that kind of shapes people's thoughts, experiences, and based on how they were taught or what church they grew up in or whatever may have shaped their boundaries, right? And it doesn't necessarily make a person's boundaries bad. It just means that everybody it's different for every person, okay? So we have to first have that level of understanding is that everybody comes from their own backgrounds, their own everything, okay? So then one of the ways to have the easiest ways to set boundaries is to first go to the Bible, okay? And, one of the things the Bible talks about is fleeing temptation. We all know about that. It also talks about conflict. When you have conflict with someone, go to someone. If that doesn't work, then work with someone and bring on somebody to help, so on and so on and so on, right? We'll take it to prayer, bring somebody in, and so on and so on, right? So when I think about boundaries in dating, like in this specific conversation, it's not about how to flee temptation. This is more so having boundaries as it pertains to just what I deem as a boundary, what you should and should not be doing in relationship with me or when I'm dating, or what I will and won't do when dating, what I will and what I won't allow in dating. So I always like to use myself as an example, but one of the boundaries that I have in dating is that I don't tell men where I live for quite a while, right? I don't tell men where I live for quite a while. First, for safety reasons, right? Because people can be whatever, right? People can say they're all types of stuff. And I just don't tell men where I live for quite a while. Why? Because you don't need to know where I live in order to date me, right? We can literally meet at certain places. Like you can pick me up at whatever place. You can send me, I can Uber, I can all the things, right? And it's just first is for safety, okay? Second reason is because if I'm not trying to get to your house, you're not trying to get to mine, then we're already positioning ourselves to like set ourselves up for success as it pertains to keeping away from moral failure, right? So first thing is for protection, safety. Second thing is to minimize opportunities for moral failure, because once you get into an enclosed location and nobody's around, anything could happen. And I don't know about you, but I know about me. And I'll just say anything could happen, right? And so I'm trying to minimize that risk, right? By taking time before you ever get to my location, okay? Third boundary that I have in dating is like, I don't kiss often, right? So I haven't kissed anybody since I've gone through divorce. So in my mind, I am saying to myself, I want to kiss my husband, right? That I want to wait till I get to the altar and I want to kiss my husband. This is where I am today, right? I may change my mind once I get into a relationship with my person, right? Today, I'm saying that because I'm like, I feel like if I get kissed, it's over, right? So I am setting this boundary initially that I don't want to kiss until I get to the altar. But when I get in a relationship with that person, we will make a decision on what that really looks like for us. Because I'm saying that now without being in a relationship. We can say all type of stuff when we're not in a relationship. And this is where I am today, right? I have the boundary where we are not going to be intimate until marriage. Like that's not going to change. Like it's just not going to change. Okay. And I don't care what we talk about. It's just not going to change. There's no hunching. There's none of that, nothing of that until we get married. Okay. That's never going to change. I'm not going to change based on him. Never. Okay. But also, one of my boundaries for relationship is healthy conversation, right? And so what I mean by that is that it can be uncomfortable to have hard conversations with a person, right? So for example, let's just say I meet someone and I'm not really interested. It is not the easiest thing to go to a person and say, hey, we went on this date, I am no longer interested. That does not feel good to receive, and that does not feel good to say to a person. However, I feel like boundaries when dating is I'm actually going to do the hard thing. And the hard thing is going to you and telling you what I need to tell you in a nice way and because it's the right thing to do, right? And instead of me ghosting someone and just them not knowing what's going on, one of my boundaries is I will go to you and I will tell you if I am interested, if I am not interested, right? Because I feel like it's the right thing to do. But another boundary I feel is I have been learning the art of healthy conflict resolution. Like I used to be someone who would argue about anything, nag about everything, right? And I am learning that one of my boundaries has to be when I can feel myself getting, heightened, I have to exit that at that moment, right? I have to not only exit the conversation, but I have to exit the space, right? Because what I have learned about me is I'll continue and continue and continue on. But if I say to the person, I am very irritated, I am very upset, I don't know how to handle myself right now, and I care about you, I care about us, I need to exit the conversation. So whether we're on the phone and I'll exit or whether we are in person and I'll exit, I'm learning that that is one of those things that I need to do from a healthy standpoint, right? Whether that person agrees or not, I'm learning that that's what I need. And I am going to do that. I'm going to find a way to articulate it in a way where you don't feel abandoned, you don't feel rejected, but you hear what it is that I'm trying to say to you. And I'm saying, I will come back to you at a particular time, right? I'm also learning the boundary is that if he says to me, I cannot talk about this right now, I cannot push him. Right? Because that is my tendency is they're like, no, I want to talk now. I want to talk now. I'm learning that I am going to have to take his word for it, right? That if he says, I can't talk about this right now, that I'm going to have to learn how to say, I hear what you're saying. If we don't talk about this, it's going to replay in my mind over and over and over again until we talk about that. Can we set a time when we are going to talk about this? That way I can put it out of my misery and know we are going to talk at this time about this, this, and that, right? And the boundary will be with him of like, if we can't do that, we can't be in a relationship because it's hurting me if we don't set a timeline because my brain is constantly doing this until we talk. And I have to tell him, this is what I need. So I can give you your time, but I need this in order to give you that, right? And I've just learned this over time, right? Because I did not do that in the past. I didn't know any of these skills in the past, and now I'm like, okay, I know these skills. So I'm learning ways to like give myself that and set those boundaries. But I think it's really important that we have to learn ourselves. We have to learn what we need. We have to learn to articulate ourselves, and we have to choose healthy people. We have to choose healthy people as we're dating, who can handle healthy conversations, healthy conflict, who can understand the fact that a person has to walk away, or a person has to come back to it, or a person goes silent before they talk, or a person has to set a date and time when they're going to talk about the particular topic, because that you have to choose people that can do that and are willing to do those things, because without it, it's a recipe for disaster. It's just a recipe for disaster, which includes, keeping from being immoral and like, intimate before marriage. Like, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. We've already talked about on the show before. We'll talk about it again, obviously, eventually. But those are some of the boundaries that I decided that I have to set up in place for myself, for the health of myself, for the health of my dating relationship, and eventually for my marriage. Okay. Now, I'm curious, what are some of the boundaries that you have in place for yourself? And then which one of my boundaries did you resonate with?